Hi, thanks again for tuning in to Sim's Workshop here on YouTube. Hope you're all having a great and fabulous day. So today we're going to be talking about On Wings and Ash by Jo Holloway. This is a really short book. I'm pretty sure it's like 130 pages long, so it's more like a novella. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I'm rather indifferent to it. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it just because there are things about it that I liked and there are things about it that I didn't like. I feel like I think the pacing is choppy, first of all. I was not a fan of the pacing at all of this story. I thought it was, I thought it was slightly poorly executed as far as the story goes. And here's why. Because, it starts off morning of one day and you're listening to these beings called the Picts, right? Just lost my controller. You're listening to these beings called the Picts. They're kind of talking to each other about a prophecy. First of all, what is this prophecy? It's very unclear. Holloway doesn't really give the reader an indication of what this prophecy is. So first of all, you're kind of like, okay, what's this prophecy that you guys are all talking about? Unless I missed it, I didn't feel like there was a lot of voices, a lot of tone in this story to really keep me thoroughly engaged. And the novel, the blurb that I received was Roman Greek mythology inspired. Okay, huge fan of Greek mythology. I've said that many times. What I didn't really like, sorry, just trying to turn on the lighting on here. What I really didn't like or took away from this was the fact that they are preparing for the Festival of Hades. I thought that was really cool. You're preparing for a Festival of Hades. Awesome, great. Except the Picts, they can talk to select humans. Why? I've already forgotten how that's even possible. But they can talk to select humans, and they already kind of discount that Greek gods exist. Alright, that kind of upset me. So it's just like, oh, well, you're telling me Greek gods don't exist in this novel. Well, it's the whole reason why I kind of wanted to pick this up. The Picts have no illusions that they are the gods themselves. So that was a pet peeve of mine. I really, really didn't like that. Then you have this, God, I really don't know how to say it. You have this story here, The pacing is really choppy. It takes place in the span of a day, so I felt like the author was dragging out some scenes just to make the story longer, but they really didn't add much to the story. And then you have these scenes that are outside of Alessia. Gosh. Alisa. You have these, Elisa's sort of like the main character, and you have these scenes that take place outside of her perspective, which is fine. We go to the Picts' perspective, it makes sense to the plotline to have his perspective, and then you're going to Sharon's perspective. Charon. It's a Jude. Why? I don't know. His scenes add absolutely nothing to the story, because I think the author was trying to highlight how much he cares for Elisa as romantically, but we didn't need this, because Holloway says as much and alludes to this through Elisa's perspective. So we already have the sense that these two, I already did, the way he cared for her and the way that these two kind of interact with one another. I already had a sense that they cared deeply by each other, but there was, social classes kept them separated. So we already got that. His perspective adds nothing to this story. It's like a one-off. It wasn't essential. It didn't add anything to his characterization, didn't add anything to their relationship. It added nothing to the fantasy of the story, to the overall plot of the story. It really didn't add anything. It was inconsequential, and I hate when there are things in novels that are inconsequential. Hate them, because it's just like, you're wasting my time here. Like, this doesn't add anything to the story. And it pisses me off when authors do that. I'm sorry, it just does. You know, I don't know if this is the first in the series. I don't know if we're going to be returning to these characters, but that chapter just didn't add anything to the novel at all. I didn't need it. The readers don't need it. We already get a sense of who Sharon is from his relationship with Alyssa and their dynamic with one another. Yes, he's charismatic, he's likable, he's a humble guy. That's all we really need to understand about him. You know, he has a nice personality, great. You know, he matches Alyssa, great. You know, other than that, it didn't really make sense to have that in there in the story. I'm sorry, it just, nope, was not a fan. Was not a fan. Alright, and then you have the story being told in first person. I'm okay with first person. I read first person all the time. I prefer third person. I don't know why, I just do. I think it's just a personal preference. I read third person more often than not. A lot of authors write in third person, so it's probably why I prefer it, just because I'm used to it. But I have no problem with first person. I read a lot of first person books and I thoroughly enjoy them. But my biggest issue was it wasn't always clear who was talking. In scenes where there are multiple people, like the Pix and Alyssa, I was just like, I had to reread these pages multiple times. I'm like, okay, who's talking? Whose perspective are we in? I thought we were in this person's perspective. Now we're in this person's perspective? Come on, like, I need it to be clear. You know, I think it's really confusing. I think it's distracting to the author if you're not very clear in your detailing, especially if you're going to be using first person, because they're saying I, and then they're saying I, and these are both internal. It's just like, wait, because then, especially if you don't have any dialogue tags, you know, like she said, he said, remark to this person with a sigh. You know, if you're just going to have like a long sets of dialogue followed by eyes all over the place, you need some tags to kind of ground the reader so that I can follow who's talking. Because if I have no idea who's talking, I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss the point of this. You know what I mean? That's what bugged me. Because it happened more than once, and it was very exhausting to read. Because I'm just like going over my head, who's reading, who's talking again, who's talking, whose perspective are we in? You know, if I'm spending too much time thinking of that, you know, I'm missing something in the story. So there needed to be more tags for the dialogue. It needed to be written clearer to show us who exactly is talking, whose perspective we are in. And that's what really bugged me about the novel, that it wasn't really clear. You know, the pacing is kind of choppy. You know, it takes place in the span of a day, 130 pages. It really shouldn't be choppy. You know, it just, 134 pages. It shouldn't be choppy. It should flow. You know, it should grab you, hook you. This should be an easy read. 134 pages. That's something someone can take to the beach and read tanning for a couple hours. You know, this could be a perfect beach read, except it's not. God, it took me longer than it should have to read this novel, because I just kept getting lost. You know, I just kept getting confused, and I really didn't like that. You know, I picked up this novel, I'm like, ooh, I was really intrigued by the premise and the plot, and then I just kind of lost myself. I was like, what's going on? So, you know, it's not really memorable as far as story goes, and it has a really open-ended ending that's not very satisfying. It doesn't really tie up any loose ends. It's just like these two characters run off in the night while the village is in absolute mayhem, and you're like, that's it? Nothing. That's it? They're just gonna run off and the town, like, what? And like, oh, and they're gonna take the, what? You know? It was not very fluid, very open-ended. Is there going to be another book? I have no idea. But it's a really unsatisfying ending because it doesn't address the prophecy mentioned in the first chapter, or that's not really clear in the first chapter, so I still have no idea what the prophecy is. It has no idea what the prophecy is. You know, it doesn't really close that up. It doesn't really tie up any of the loose ends. It just kind of ends. Like it just fell off a cliff. And then that was it. That's all she wrote. I just didn't like it. I didn't like that at all. But you know what? I'm never going to not recommend a book because maybe I don't like it, but you might. You know, there are a lot of books out there, and there are a lot of people who, you know, read the reviews on Goodreads. There are people who liked this novel. It just didn't connect with me. But you know what? You can go ahead and purchase this book off of Amazon. It's on the Kindle. I'll have a link to purchase it on in the description below. It's not available on Bookshop, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would have just sent you all to Bookshop because I love Bookshop. You know, great resource for books for local booksellers to earn money. And money's too tight, you know, try checking out from your local library. If they don't have it, you know, recommend it to them. I used to do it all the time. It's super easy to do. And you know what, libraries are a great resource and they definitely deserve all of our support. And I hope you will support me by liking this video and subscribing to my channel. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And as always, happy reading.